Now, there's been discourse. There's been discourse on social media. There's been discourse in conversations. And the discourse here is people saying that the boy child is being left behind. There's been rising concerns around school dropouts, violence, mental health, and shifting gender roles that have fueled claims that boys are being left behind. Others argue that this narrative oversimplifies complex social realities and risks reinforcing harmful ideas about gender and power. Today, we examine whether boys are genuinely being neglected or whether the claim itself is doing more harm than good. And that's today's debate topic for the African View. Are boys being left behind, or is the claim doing more harm than good? Joining us in today's debate is Wandile Dladla, men's mental and health advocate, as well as host of the Men's Conference podcast from South Africa. Kaata Minah is also joining us on the line, who's a gender justice consultant, joining us from Sierra Leone. Thank you so much to both of you for joining us on the line. It's an incredibly important conversation to have, especially with the discourse that's taking place. I'm going to start with you, Wandile. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Let's hear your answer to this particular question. Are boy children being left behind, or is the claim doing more harm than good? Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity, and good morning to your listeners. I truly, definitely think that boy children are being left behind, because when we look into, for example, a simple thing that we've got here in South Africa is take the girl child to work. What happens to the boy child? When you take her into the office and you school her and you educate her, you put the girl child at level 17, and she's got no one to be a companion. So the boy child is, and I think it's strategically been done, referring to South Africa from the days of apartheid, moving into the new South Africa. It's been strategically done to leave the boy child out of economics, to leave them out of the schooling environment, and to make it even harder for them to provide and do the three P's as a man: protect, provide, and profess his queen. You can't do the first one if you haven't done the last one, and the last one doesn't work if the first one wasn't done. So strategically, we've left the boy child out.
All right, I'm going to come to you, Kaata Minah. Good morning to you as well. Let's find out your opening statements in this debate.
Good morning, and thank you for having me. Hi, Wandile. I just listened to your points, and I think just starting, it's important to go back to what the statistics say and what the data says, right? I wouldn't say the boy child is being left behind. However, I will say that using a language like that then, puts us in a position where we're trying to end patriarchy, right? And this is a system that literally oppresses, more or less, there's an oppression for women, right? Generally speaking, right? And if we go back to data, we know that there has been years and years of inequalities when we talk about girls and where girls are and what stage girls and women, right? So most times when you see things, for example, like bring your daughter to work, that if you go back to reading, why is that important? Is to show girls that this is an avenue where you can aspire to be this, because for years, girls could not aspire. There's child marriage, there's teenage pregnancy. So things like that is something we call in gender studies affirmative actions, where you show girls that this is also a reality, because in the world that we live in, boys are advantaged, right? This is not to say individual boys do not have a disadvantage. They do. And that's why the conversation should not be based on are boys left behind or are girls in front. No, it's how do we dismantle patriarchy that allows us to even make systems or programs or whatever that puts, we have to pay particular attention to girls based on data, based on our experiences, based on inequality, based on years and years of oppression, that we're saying that because it takes us at least 130 years to get to equality, we have to start with the girl child. And starting with the girl child because she becomes a woman, that means is we have to be intentional when we're running programs for girls to have them come to that point where we can say this is an equitable ground for girls to work with boys. Again, I would not frame it as boys being left behind. I will frame it as an intentional act to ensure that we get to equality. So I think men like you, for example, Wandile, I feel like you should be at the forefront of educating boys. Yeah, I think it's also on us as humans, away from our gender, to educate boys to ensure that they're learning that this is a different world, that girls are having, programs that are continuing to empower them and give them power to show up in different ways. And boys should also understand that the dynamics are changing. And I think it's on men who are progressive to also learn that. I'll pause for here.
Kaata, thank you so much. Wandile, let's come back to you. Right from the beginning of Kaata's statement, she mentioned the term patriarchy. And with that mention, this is a systematic conversation that she's now having. What are your thoughts on this one from the systematic point of view of patriarchy as a system that's been existing for centuries in this conversation?
I think that if we go back to the origins of Africa and we understand where we come from as Africans, we know very well, Guti, women sit very high, in terms of leadership. We had female kings here, and there was a lot of thought that went into it. This is a Western idea of patriarchy, where in the African space, even in African spirituality, we teach with the mother spirit sits at the top of that triangle. So the feminine energy ranks the highest. So I don't even want to talk about patriarchy because it's not a system of ours. It's something that we need to work together as Black men, Black female, to push out of our systems, to go back to our systems. So I believe that we need to teach boy children from a young age how to love, how to be loved, how to be vulnerable, who to be vulnerable to. That provision is not a measure of leadership and but it's a means of keeping the home intact. So we've been taught things that are not us, and we need to unlearn these things and reteach it to ourselves. We need to unlearn that our cultures and our ways are evil and that they are dark. And we need to understand that our rituals kept us sane and they kept us connected to those that came before us, that walked before us. There's no ways when you understand the role of a woman in society and where we come from as Africans, will you ever put a hand on her and abuse her? You will never rape your mother, and you will never rape your sister. So when you look at women out there, you will understand that our biggest mistakes is we never groom the boy child. We leave the boy child out of grooming. So we always prepare the girl child for marriage. She's taught how to treat a man, how to give him food, how to take care of them. And the boy child goes, make sure she's fed. And that's the only thing that he's given. And we need to stop this. Men like myself, I agree with that one point, only with that one point, Kaata, that we need to, progressive men need to step in and take care and groom these boy children and say, I see you, I hear you, and I feel you. And from there on, set the ground for boy children. Because I only learned what being a man was when I became a father. Because I didn't have an example. My father didn't father me. He didn't take me through the stages of manhood. So I call it active learning. I was learning how to be that man and also learning how to be a father. And a lot of boys are going through this, and they're going to go through this unless we change the narrative.
All right, interesting. We need to take a break, so both of you stay on the line. I'm very interested to find out about your point, Wandile, after the break. Are you saying patriarchy does not exist on the African continent, even though some of the examples that you actually gave speak very well to patriarchy, how women are taught to be groomed to take care of a man in a young age? That sounds a lot like patriarchy to me. So I wanted to understand your point a little bit further when it comes to that, but I also want to hear Kaata's rebut to what you just said after the break. Let's hear from you. Are boy children being left behind, or do such utterances actually cause more harm than good? Let us know at Channel Africa 1.
Are you fluent in French, Chinyanja, Portuguese, and Kiswahili? Are you passionate about radio? And are you looking to work in South Africa? Do you have papers that qualify you to work in South Africa? In that case, we might have an opportunity for you to work for Channel Africa. Send us your CV and demo at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Remember, if you don't hear from us within 14 days, it means you have not made it or you have not been selected. Channel Africa, the African perspective. # on the move. and connect with us.
All right, it's a heated debate this morning. Are boy children being left behind, or does this claim do more harm than good in our societies? This is the African View, where we bring two people to debate a very contentious conversation on the African continent. Joining us today on this one and continuing the debate is Wandile Dladla, men's mental and heal advocate and host of Men's Conference podcast, as well as Kaata Minah, who is a gender justice consultant. Wandile, I posed a question to you before we went on a break. You said you don't even want to delve deeper into patriarchy because those are not our ancestral systems here on the African continent. Does that mean you're saying that patriarchy has not existed and does not exist on the continent?
No, it does exist. And that's what I'm pointing to, is that we've learned this and we've put it into our systems and we've practiced it in our homes. And we now ride on it as if it's ancestral and that it is part of who we are. It is something that was taught to us. And if you learn something, you can very easily unlearn it with intention. So we need to come together as Africa and say, this is not working for us. This is not growing us. This is actually setting us back. There are a lot of things that we need to fix as Africans, for Africa, by Africa. And if we do not fix it, we will give it to the next generation to carry forward. So it's like the poverty mentality in Africa. If we don't fix it now, we're going to teach our children poor ways.
Kaata, Wandile does says, yes, I do acknowledge these systems are in place here on the African continent, but still stands firm in the fact that, the boy child is being left behind. Giving an example that he's a boy child that felt left behind. His own father wasn't there in his life and he had to learn a lot of things through lives and its challenges. Also, he spoke about the grooming of women to become, adults that are able to take care of the family and the man, but the man isn't giving the same things. Is he proving the point of patriarchy and how the boy child may or may not being left behind? What do you say to this?
Right. I think Wandile and I literally on the same point. I just want to say that he has made my point for me in terms of, when we're talking about patriarchy. I am pro Pan-African myself, and I think, African history has shown us time and time again the feminine energy, right? The power of women, how women were or what women stood for. And like you said, this is a system that, whether or not it has existed, because even in our ancestral times, right, there has been times of oppression, but rightfully said that if this system has been brought to us, which means we have to acknowledge it's here, we exist in it. And because we exist in it, you think of, first of all, when you see a girl child, the first thing that comes to a lot of African homes and African minds is, like you spoke about marriage. How are we going to groom her to be a good wife? How are we going to groom her to be a good woman, right? Why don't we think about her beyond a wife duty? Why is she not seen as a person, for example, that can be a president? Why is she not seen as somebody that can lead, right? Why is she, first of all, seen as a wife? Why are you even thinking about that? Why are you not thinking of grooming boys to be husbands? But then you're grooming them, as you said, to be protectors. And I was reading something that said yesterday that women have always been protectors. We just don't claim it in the ways that men claim it. Because, for example, if a woman sees a child in harm, she runs. She doesn't look back. Like, this is her protecting her child, right? But we don't claim it in those ways. And it's because of systems like patriarchy that we're talking about. And we have to acknowledge that if we live in a patriarchal world, we then have to dismantle patriarchy. We then also have to unlearn it, right? That this is not natural. This is not normal. There's something fundamentally wrong in this. But in this patriarchal world, the evidence shows that women are disproportionately disadvantaged. Girls, to be a girl basically means to resist. From the time you were born, you're resisting. Like, again, if we go back to education, for example, if we go down to it, in primary school, when girls start going to school, before they become adolescents, right, before their body changes, they thrive in school. The data shows that girls will do so well in school, but by the time they start body changes, right, then there are other pressures. She has to care. She has to, there's menstruation coming in, first of all, that's in some homes that people don't even talk about it then, which means girls miss schools. because they're on their period, because they're not provided care during their period, right? There's also, like what you said, child marriage. There is teenage pregnancy. There are all those things that compound on the girls. So by the time she's going through all of those changes and all of the changes in our society and all the pressure put on her based on the system, right? And this is why when we're talking about these issues, then we talk about systemic change. We don't talk about individual changes. And I'm with you. And I acknowledge your experience as a man who was not groomed at home. And I think in an ideal world, we will all be groomed. We will all groom children based on their ability. Show them love. Love will be the center of it, not their gender. So if my grooming means that when my parents see me and they see that my strength is in speaking, they will then encourage me to speak. Nobody will tell me, because you're a girl, you have to be quiet. You know, girls are not supposed to be loud. You know what I mean? So I think we're all, you and I, are moving towards the same pace and acknowledging the same thing, that some of these things were brought into our society. And because they're brought into our society, it has to be an intentional systemic change of, first of all, getting rid of patriarchy and showing boys and girls that this is not normal, that in a normal world, that boys are not over girls or girls are not over boys, that they're different in the ways they're made up, but that does not mean their capacity or their ability is different, that they can aspire in the same ways that boys can aspire, that girls could aspire.
All right, Wandile, we're about to wrap up, but let me get your closing statements on this. Essentially, Kaata saying, well, you're agreeing with me. You're actually proving my point that, this might be a harmful statement to make, that, boys are being left behind because of the systematic, issues that have faced women and girls throughout history because of patriarchy. What do you say to that? How do you rebut and, affirm the fact that boys are being left behind?
I think the first thing is that because I'm a gentleman, I will admit to the wrongs of society. And secondly, I do not agree totally with that statement, because we are punishing boys for the patriarchy that was taught and brought on. And if we're looking to change Africa and change the way that we think and see ourselves as Black men, because the Black man that we speak of is your brother, he's your son, he's your uncle, he's a neighbor. And if you're looking to change that, I'm saying, let us treat these kids as equals. Let us take children to work, not take the girl child to work. I see drives in South Africa where, pads are being dropped off at schools and everywhere. That's systematically excluding the boy there. And how do we involve the boy child there? Because he's also going through body changes. How do we include this drive to include, how do we make it a holistic drive? Because boys are feeling left out, because girls are pulled to one side and are given pads and taught how to use this. How do we then get pulled in as men and say, let's equalize? I'm all for equalizing, because right now what we're doing is we're pushing the boy child to the corner. And that's why we're seeing the rise of GBV, because the frustration levels have pushed boys who've gone into manhood, who haven't been emotionally trained, whose IQ isn't at the highest. And they've gotten to a stage where they're frustrated, they're abusing alcohol, perhaps abusing drugs, and then lastly, abusing our sisters. So
all right.
I don't agree. And thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for this morning. Thank you so much to both of you. I think this is also one that the debate will continue, both on social media, and this is one that probably could have continued for another hour here on the show, but we have to leave it there. Thank you, though, to both of you, Kaata Minah and Wandile Dladla, for joining us in today's African View.
Thank you so much.
That's Kaata Minah, gender justice consultant, as well as men's mental and heal advocate and host of Men's Conference podcast, Wandile Dladla, debating on today's African View on whether or not the boy child is being left behind, or whether the claim is doing more harm than good in today's society. Well, let us know what you think about this one. I'm pretty sure you have thoughts on it. +27 83 288 6684. It's 10:30 Central Africa time. Once again, time for our latest sports news.